This is problem number 7 for assessment number 8. It says use the given information to find sine of s plus t, tangent of s plus t, and the quadrant of s plus t. So you can see we're using sum formulas for sine and sum formulas for tangent. So we're going to be using our sum and difference formulas. They give you cosine s is negative 3 over 5, and cosine t is negative 8 over 17. S and t are in quadrant 3. So one thing to just keep in mind, s and t are different angles. Because s and t are different angles, we're not talking about the same triangle. We're talking about two different triangles. Now they tell us they're both in quadrant 3. So the first thing we want to do is we want to draw out a triangle for quadrant 3, and we're going to call this the S triangle. And then we're going to do another one, and this is the T triangle. Now, for the S triangle, they say cosine is negative 3/5. So that means that this is negative 3, because here's theta, and this is 5. And for the T triangle, this cosine is negative 8 over 17, because that's theta as well. Now I have to find this side here. So I need to use a Pythagorean theorem, and I'll say negative 3 squared plus, I'll call this x. So this is x squared equals 25. So that's 9 plus x squared equals 25. Subtract the 9, I get x squared equals 16. Divide by, or square root it, and I get x equals 4. So I know that this is 4, but it's not 4, it is actually negative 4. So that tells me that sine of s, sometimes I like to put the parentheses just to make it look a bit better. Sine of s is negative 4 over 5. I know that to be true because we're in quadrant 3, and we know in quadrant 3, we can draw those out here. We know quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're both positive here. We've got cosine being negative here. They're both negative in quadrant 3. And then we've got cosine being positive and sine being negative in quadrant 4. Okay, let's go to this one. Let's find this side. We need to do negative 8 squared plus x squared equals 17 squared. So that's 64 plus x squared equals, and 17 squared, 289. So we subtract the 64, we get x squared equals, that's 225. Yeah, 225. And we do the square root there, and x equals 15. Let's make sure that's right. So we minus 64, do the square root, and we do get 15. But it's also, this is negative 15 here, because we're in quadrant 3 still. S and T are in quadrant 3. So that means that sine of t equals, we would call this negative 15 over 17. Now, they want us to find sine s plus t, but they also want us to find tan s plus t. And if we look at our sum and difference formulas, sine theta plus beta, so sine of, this will be s plus t, will be sine s, cosine t, cosine s, sine t. So we need, obviously we have what we need. We have cosine s, we have sine s, we have cosine t, and sine t. But for the tangent one, we need the tangent of s and the tangent of t. So we need to go back in here and say that this is tan s, and we can get this easily because that's the opposite over the adjacent. So that's negative 4 over negative 3, which is 4/3. So tan s is 4/3. And then we can do that same thing for tan t. That's negative 15 over negative 8, which we know to be 15 over 8. Okay, now we're ready to go. We can say sine, so this is part A, of s plus t is equal to, bring back our formula, and this will be sine s cosine t plus cosine s sine t. All right, we can throw in what we know. We know sine s is negative 4/5 times cosine, this would be cosine t. Cosine t, they told us, was negative 8 over 17 plus cosine s, which was negative 3/5 times sine t, which is negative 15 over 17. Multiply those through, we get 32 over 5 times 17 is 85. And this would be plus 45 over 85, which give you 45, and that's 77 over 85 is the answer there. So sine s plus t, 77 over 85. Part B. They want us to do tan s plus t. So tan s plus t is going to equal, if we bring out the tangent one, we can see that we have tan, this will be tan s plus tan t over 1 minus tan s tan t. Okay, so we know that that is equal to tan s, which is 4/3, plus tan t, which is 15 over 8, over 1 minus 4/3 times 15 over 8. And that's going to equal, so let's go ahead and plug this in the calculator. So if we do 4 divided by 3 plus 15 divided by 8, convert that to a fraction, that's 77 over 24. Over, on the bottom we'll do 1, well let's do 4 divided by 3, and we'll take it times the 15 divided by 8. Which is right here. And then I do 1 minus that answer. Gives us negative 1.5, which would be negative 3/2. So now I can go ahead and when I divide those, let's do 2 fractions here. Well, I don't need to do that. Yeah, let's do it. We'll do 77 over 24 divided by negative 3 over 2. Negative 77 over 36. So that's tan s plus t. Our last question they ask us for is part C, and I'm just going to write part C right here. What quadrant is s plus t in? Well, if sine is positive here and tangent is negative, well, where's sine positive? Sine's positive in quadrants 1 and 2. Well, the only way for tan to be negative, if you look at our reciprocal functions, and our quotient functions, we have tan being sine over cosine. So the only way tan is negative is if sine is negative or cosine is negative. Well, in this case, sine is positive. That means cosine has to be negative. Well, where is sine positive and cosine negative? That's quadrant 2. So our answer here is quadrant 2.